One win in 11 games for Manchester City. Unbelievable. Are we writing them off completely? Is it done for the title?
I'm not writing them off. I'm not writing them off. It might be some kind of scars that I've still got to get over from sort of previous years and watching them sort of rally in the second half of a season and go on these incredible runs. I think they got too many good players. They got the best manager of a generation. I think they've got obviously the resource and the wealth to be able to go out and bolster their options in January. They should get some of their injured players back sooner rather than later as well. And I think that as a consequence of that, you'd be silly to sleep on Manchester City. I think whether they're top of the pile come the end of the season or not, they're going to have a massive say in where the Premier League trophy ends up.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think City are completely out of it now. And look, 1 win in 11, 8 losses is unheard of for Pep Guardiola. And I think we can talk, as we have done, about like the injuries, about Rodri, but there's psychological issues at play here. You're 1-0 up 5 minutes from full time against your biggest rivals, and Mateus Nunes makes a mistake and then tries to atone for it in a ridiculous way. That's like a psychological head loss. And as soon as it's 1-0, as soon as Bruno scores that penalty, I think everyone who's been watching City over the last few weeks knows United are going to score. It's unforgivable that a long ball in the last minute against your rivals, your biggest rivals, there is nobody tracking the ball. It's unforgivable that Edison just waits and then decides to come out and then gives Ahmad basically a free shot on goal. Fantastic touch, by the way, but still, it's unforgivable, and that has to be psychological. And you can't be too critical, right? This is a team who've just won 4 Premier Leagues. Most of the players on that pitch have won 5 or 6. But football is cyclical, and City's team have come to the end of their cycle. De Bruyne's not good enough anymore. He's fantastic on the ball, but he can't run more than like 1 or 2 yards. So unless the pass is right on him and he's got loads of space, which no team worth their salt are going to give him, he's completely ineffective. Same with Bernardo Silva, completely run into the ground. Erling Haaland as well. The last 2 years, all City have done is play through him. He's obviously tired. He's played every single game. They sold any backup striker that we had. So, of course, the players are going to be really knackered. And I think Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager in history, and there's no point in questioning any of his methods. I would say, in terms of transfers and in terms of the players that are brought in, I think versatility has killed this City team at the moment because he's brought in players to play in 3 or 4 different positions. And when your back's up against the walls, you need killers in those positions. Like Jack Grealish was brought in from Aston Villa, and the compilations have been going around about what he can do when he plays in his favoured position and when he has freedom. But of course, just like Arteta, Pep Guardiola wants control, so he changes the ability of that player. And now we have no creators. We have no creators because the creative players that we do have, like your De Bruyne's, like your Gundogan's, like your Bernardo Silva's, are old, tired, or injured. So it's really, really difficult. I think there's no hate or dislike from my heart towards any of the City players who've given me the best memories of my life, but this team is finished. And we've got 2 weeks now until a January transfer window. Villa away, we will lose that. I can guarantee you we will lose that. That's a tough game that we will lose. And then Everton at home and Leicester away. Get 6 points there and maybe 9, 12 points behind Liverpool, and then spend some money in January. 3 or 4 players, bring them in and see what can happen, but it's too late for the title.
This is so interesting because I think on one end, like if you watch Football Forecast every week, Kim's in the corner of this is a bizarre season that anything could happen, and I'm also in the same corner. I think H, you're kind of in a similar corner as well. And I think generally a lot of people are going, we're not going to see 90, 95 points. So in that regard, I think anyone's actually alive in this title race as long as you can stay within the points difference. Obviously, Villa away proves a really sticky task for them because City have been atrocious recently. How does he fix this with what he's got right now over the next 2 weeks? Because if in the next 2 weeks City don't pick up 9 points, in my opinion, then it is going to be really difficult.
See, I always think that when people say, and Kim mentioned it, it's a psychological thing. More often than not, I look at it and I go, I get that, but how can you ever measure that? From us looking from the outside in, how can you measure where they are at psychologically? But when you look at the talent that he still has available, that's the only answer to this. It has to be psychological because I can't find any other reason. Yes, there are players missing. Yes, the system that looks a bit off for some of the players that are being tasked with it right now. I get all of that. And some of them physically don't look at the right level. But the drop-off has been ridiculous. This isn't a side that are going through a bit of a sticky patch. You're talking about an 11 or 12 game run now where Manchester City are just nowhere near the level that they need to be at and have been at for many, many years. So what does he do to fix it? It's really tough to say. He needs to go, in my opinion, a little bit more pragmatic in terms of the general setup because they're shipping too many goals. And whatever you say about players in their attacking third and maybe them being out of form, they still have enough match winners. They still have enough quality within their ranks. And you got to get the basics right. Shut up shop a little bit. They're 12th for XG conceded, which is terrible for a side that you're looking
You
at.
don't
as
want a league
contender.
like that.
No.
Exactly. So fix that first. I think fix the base. Be a little bit more pragmatic. Have more people dropping in. Have it more compact if you need to. And then trust in your De Bruynes and your Haalands and your Bernardo Silvas and your Fodens, because one of them should be able to produce you a moment in a game. They're of that quality.
I think this point about psychology, I completely agree, because in previous seasons, and I think us looking from the outside, probably more so than City fans, he'll call on Mahrez for the exact right 4 games, then Mahrez is out. Then he'll call on Sterling for the exact right 6 games. And I think at the moment, he's rotating wingers, and no winger is scoring goals. Whether it's Bernardo on the right, Savinho, Grealish on the left, Doku, you've tried Mateus Nunes on the left. He's probably been the most prolific in a wide area. He's obviously played Foden off either side. Nobody is delivering. And I think at this point, he's almost like he's got a pack of cards in front of him and he's just going through them, and no card is delivering what he wants.
The thing is, I do think it's psychological. I think they've got in their head, and I think there are players who've never been under this amount of pressure before in terms of like a losing streak. The players who basically come into Man City and won almost every single game and every single trophy available to them, and they probably don't know what's going on. But I actually disagree. I don't think the quality is there to win games. And I don't even necessarily think that the defence is as much of an issue as people are making out. Yeah, okay, 12th for XG conceded is really poor. But we mentioned last year how susceptible City were on the break and transition. They've been like that for years because Pep Guardiola has always and will always prioritise ball-playing centre-backs over natural defenders. And the only person who was stopping that before was Rodri. You look at that Manchester United game, there was no chances created. We scored a goal from a deflected cross and an unmarked man in the middle. Apart from that, we had 0 chances in that game. And it's basically been the same for the last 11 games because we don't have those players anymore. The players that you're thinking of, and you look at the 11, and I understand it, you look at the 11 and you think about the past. You think about De Bruyne, you think about Bernardo Silva, you think about, even if you think about Jack Grealish, Jeremy Doku, but they're not players who are performing like that at the moment. And some of them have just come to that natural conclusion. That's why when Kevin De Bruyne is in the papers about a move away, we're not talking about him moving to Spain or Germany. We're talking about him going to San Diego. Because unfortunately, as amazing as he is, that's his level now. And these players are at the end of their cycle.
But that's fine with Kevin De Bruyne, I accept that. And I think injuries have killed Kevin De Bruyne's career, if we're being honest, right? But then you look at people like Phil Foden. What on earth has happened to Phil Foden? He was supposedly the best player last season, and he's completely failed to turn up this season. Not starting games all the time. When he has started, he does nothing. He's not offering anything. Jeremy Doku, however many months ago, he was seen as a brilliant signing. Not up to the level. At some point, these players have to take responsibility as well, right?
Yeah,
because
for sure. And
the names are still there. The quality is still there in theory. We're just not seeing it on the pitch.
There's a little bit of quality there that should be doing better. I do think Phil Foden should be doing better. I think overall the squad doesn't have the requisite quality, but I do agree. I think there's too much like self-pity and self-wallowing. The fact that Kyle Walker is club captain, which I've disagreed with, by the way, from second one, he is a dreadful captain. Every time he's in the press, all he does is speak bad about the club. But you've just lost to your biggest rivals on your worst run of form. That's the only game that the fans care about. We're still City fans. Call us bitter blues all you want. I don't care. All I want to do this season is beat Man United home and away. You've just lost in a dreadful circumstance because you've not tracked back your runner and you've played terrible all game and you're the club captain and you don't go and speak to the press afterwards and you're completely silent and you storm down the dressing room. That's not acceptable. And that's what I mean. These players haven't been in this situation before and they're not reacting well whatsoever. And obviously, Guardiola has a little bit of a part to play as well. Like, you have to get your players up for it. The whole scratching of the head and saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. It's not working. I think they just need to stop feeling so sorry for themselves.
I think there's a really good point in there where you were talking about how they've never lost. And I think when you've never lost, you don't know how it feels to be down there. And I think that's why sometimes, I think the United game is a really good example of that, when Lisandro Martinez has the ball and Foden's screaming at Haaland to come across to the opposite side of his shoulder. And Foden doesn't do it either, actually. And so neither of them do it because they're both almost like sulking at each other. Lisandro plays the ball, Ahmad picks it up, and then as he puts it in, Gvardiol tries to back heel it off the line. So there's just a lot of bizarre things happening. And I think I also do look at that and go, yes, psychologically they're battered and it's not working, and their legs are a little bit gone. But then I also look at it and I go, these guys don't know how to lose. And now they're losing non-stop and the gaffer's got no fixes and no one on the bench is producing. Yeah. And now all of a sudden everyone's looking at each other going like, well, I'm not actually the guy, really. I'm the guy when it's working. Anyway, very, very quickly, what does Guardiola want for Christmas?
Rodri back. He's got to be. He's got to be. They're so susceptible on the counter-attack. I know they were at times previously as well, but he really helps with that. And he's a driving force. And he's the type of player that will take the game by the neck and say, no, we need to fix this. And we need to be a bit more driven. We need to be a bit more forward-thinking. We need to be a bit more aggressive. Rodri brings aggression, but also a real technical stability as well in that midfield. And I just think you look at that City team right now, and with the exception of maybe Erling Haaland, you don't really look at anyone and fear them. Rodri brings that fear factor back.
We need to atone for the errors that we've made over the last 5 transfer windows. The only good player we've bought in over the last 3 or 4 years has been Erling Haaland. Every other transfer has been a dramatic failure, and they haven't covered for the positions that we need cover for. We need a player of Zubamendi's quality or a CDM like that. We need a Bruno Guimaraes who's a bully. He's a S-house. He is, and that's what he is. And he's also incredibly creative. We need a backup striker. If Evan Ferguson's going, get him. And we need a fullback. Because you can't keep on playing centre-backs in fullback positions. Because as soon as 2 of them go, you concede, what is it now, 31 goals in 11 games? And that's what's going to happen. So we need to buy, if we want to save the season. And look, we still might be in the Champions League. And weirder things have happened. I think Chelsea finished 6th, didn't they, when they won the Champions League? Weirder things have happened. And if you want to win something, get Bruno, get Zubamendi, get Evan Ferguson, get Anthony Robertson, get Jared Braithwaite. Bring in some of these players because we're going to have to spend money. Because as much as you want to talk about City and how much money they've spent, the last few transfer windows, they haven't spent very much and they haven't spent that well. So now's the time to just spend money if you want to save the season.